Minecraft Dungeons is still a mystery to many players. A lot of things that happen in the game, we don't know why. We don't know why Guarding Strike combines with 35% reduction armor for 67.5% total reduction, while Ironhide Amulet combines with 35% reduction armor for 60.6% total reduction, despite both Ironhide Amulet and Guarding Strike adding the same reduction. We don't know why Fighter's Bindings have 15.1 hits a second whether you have 200% attack speed or 250%. We don't know why Anchors or Void Touch Blades in their uniques have a blatant blind spot. We don't know why the Spider Cave spawn at the beginning of an Ancient Hunt is so god-awfully bad and unfair. We don't know why mobs were given the Invisible, Stunning, or Levitation shot enchantments in the first place, nor why mobs still seem to be invisible now and then to this day. We don't know why the original Apocalypse plus 20 happened in the first place, and we certainly don't know why the Arctic Fox pet isn't the one described as the best pet. But an even greater mystery that's eluded us for so long is, what is the true average damage increase of Committed? Originally I thought it to be 50% because I wrongly believed the enchant gave you a random 0 to 100% damage boost against wounded enemies. To be fair, this was an easy misunderstanding, but back in the early days of the community, mainly on Discord, I argued for it being better than sharpness and even crit, stating with confidence that it was a 50% damage boost. It was then repeated by others without question or research, some even claiming that number while taking credit for the idea, when they'd only started doing so after I'd brought up that number and why. My bad. Then, after learning how it actually worked, I plugged in some numbers to see what Committed added to those starting damage percentages, and then averaged those ones out. I got roughly between 40% and 45% more damage on average. I presented that average number to the community instead of the original 50%, and it again caught on more and more. Again, it was being repeated without question or research. Again, some repeating these numbers as if they were their own findings, numbers that, while more accurate than before, were still at the same time not fully correct. My bad again. But while others are okay with repeating info that others have shared, whether true or not, and while some others are busy just copying that info and those findings without doing their own research and then taking credit for that incorrect info, I am willing to do what no other sane individual should think about doing, and I calculated the actual average amount of DPS that Committed adds, regardless of your weapon. I calculated this amount at a 1% starting amount of damage, 2%, 3%, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 49%, because a starting hit of 50% to 99% kills in 2 hits regardless, and I averaged all of those values out. At one point, my 2 monitors had 8 windows on them, 1 in each corner as I worked on this while my girlfriend did her own work along with me. The average was not very flattering, as you can see. 36.8% of an overall DPS boost. It's nearly in the middle of sharpness and crit. But that's not really being fair, is it? If you don't know what I mean, it's because a lot of these values here don't actually matter. If you start off doing 11% damage per hit, you'll go from a 10-hit kill to 7. But 12% starting damage will similarly drop from 9 hits needed to kill to 7. Since both are reduced to 7, I didn't include both, just the first instance of a hit being reduced to 7. Similarly, a starting hit of 42% to 49% will all originally be a 3-hit kill, reduced to 2 hits by Committed, so I didn't include all of them either, just 42%. If we instead go by omitting all of those values, then the average of Committed climbs up to 39.3%, still below crit, but better. However, life's not always fair, and every value between 1% and 49% still matters for Committed, so that 36.8% is still solid. We can prove this. If we compare Committed to Sharpness, which has a 33% damage boost, and look at the starting percentage of damage and how many hits are needed to kill with each enchantment at that percentage, we see that, initially, Sharpness needs more hits to kill than Committed, by a little bit. But as the percentage climbs from 1% to even just 2%, that gap in needed hits gets smaller and smaller, until Sharpness catches up at just 7%, and stays on par with Committed, only deviating once, at 15%. Except, Sharpness needs a lower starting damage percentage to 2-hit kill than Committed does, 37.6% versus 41.5%. So in terms of the raw damage increase, Sharpness is slightly worse at a 1% starting hit, a bit worse at a 2 to 6% starting hit, is equal to Committed from a starting hit of 7 to 37%, aside from 1 damage value, and better than Committed from beyond 37% up to 42%, where they even out again. However, while committed can never one-hit kill an enemy. Sharpness can, if your starting hit would originally do 75.4%. This is all just a damage comparison to show committed more or less deserves its 36.8% average. Between the two enchants, sharpness is still a flat damage buff that does not multiply with other flat damage buffs, while committed, on the other hand, is a full damage multiplier that multiplies your total physical damage. One point that could help committed is that, since it gains its damage based on the health that an enemy is missing, then any damage an enemy takes, like from swirling or Shock Wave, should help boost committed, right? Sounds like it makes sense, right? It did when I also brought up that point in the community after saying that committed wasn't a 50% boost. And that point was repeated, saying committed worked better than crit with those indirect damage enchants because the damage they dealt accelerated committed's boost. Some have even, again, continued to repeat this information as if it wasn't introduced by someone else. But you should be careful when you go around sharing incorrect information as if it's your own idea, because if the person who actually originally thought of it then later decides to actually test their own hypothesis and declares it wrong, it is a good way to out yourself as someone who just copies the work of others, or at least shows that you had no research or testing done behind that claim. Admittedly, that's what I did. I said it with confidence without testing, but it was at least an idea that I'd thought of for myself. I'm willing to take full responsibility for that incorrect information. But it's better to be honestly wrong about a hypothesis because it doesn't work out how you envision, than it is to spread incorrect information from someone else's hypothesis as if your own idea, because a true scientific mind will question every new hypothesis or claim that someone else brings up, and would want to test it themselves to see if it's true, so that the potential incorrect information doesn't cause any damage. They shouldn't want to go around repeating it blindly for the prospect of getting praised for giving individuals someone else's info. So yeah. This one's on me. I was mostly wrong. Committed's not as good as I thought it was. It's still mathematically better than sharpness, in most cases, sure. However, crit is still a more damaging option overall. This was all averaged out from different starting percentages, sure. But remember that a weapon's damage per hit isn't the same as the percentage that weapon's hits will take from an enemy's health. Even Fighter's Bindings could do 1% to one enemy and 15% to another because they both have different amounts of health. You can still run committed if you want. It's not terrible. Sometimes it's better than crit, but overall, crit is measurably better. That's all for now. But still, crit is an average 40% DPS boost on any weapon, whether it has fast weak hits or slow strong hits, unlike what some others have said.